Hi, my name is Ashley and I'm a mom of 2 little girls. I have a 4-year-old named Kylie and I also have a 2-year-old named Mia. Now, I'm a huge proponent of the fact that you don't need to have a bunch of stuff in order to do Montessori effectively, because Montessori is not about the stuff. At its heart, it is about respect for the child. It is about taking the time to thoughtfully observe your child so that you can discover what their needs and interests are and respond by tweaking the environment accordingly for them. But if we are being realistic here, having at least some of the stuff can often be really helpful. Now, what's important is to figure out which of the stuff you do need and which of the stuff you don't need, because there is a lot of marketing hype out there, especially with regard to babies. So what I would like to do for today's video is, as a Montessori parent who has been there already, to help you sort through this ocean of stuff to really help you focus on what's most important. So from one busy parent to another, today I would like to share with you what I would consider my Montessori newborn essentials. So in thinking about how I wanted to organize this list of essentials for you guys, I thought it might be really helpful to really reflect on what it is that a newborn does in their day-to-day life. Like, what do they do all day? A lot of people say, oh, newborns sleep all the time. All they do is eat, sleep, and poop. Well, it's true to a degree, but not 100%. That is a good chunk of their day in their first couple of weeks. But they are also learning and growing so incredibly rapidly, it's awe-inspiring. So I came up with 4 main categories of activity, and that's how I organized it. And they are as follows: eating, sleeping, caregiving, and exploration. Now, I did want to keep this list as short as possible for you, again, so that you could really focus on what is most important. So just the essentials. There are likely going to be a couple of other things in these categories that you personally decide that you would like to have for your newborn, and that is totally fine. But what I wanted to do was really focus on, like I said, some of those super important things that any parent needs, regardless of whether or not they are a Montessori family, as well as what I would consider some of those Montessori essentials for each of those different categories. So let's start off with the first category, which I think is probably the most important category, and that is eating. And the first thing on my list is not something that you can go out and buy at a store. It is something that you already have. It's you. Your child needs your time and your attention in order to begin establishing a connection with you from the very moment of birth. It's often very tempting when your newborn is very sleepy and not really paying attention to you very much in those first couple of days to want to sit on your phone while you're nursing or bottle feeding, or try to read a book or watch a TV show, things like that. I was totally there. I remember what those days were like, and I definitely did some of those things sometimes. But I've learned a lot since then, and I've learned a lot about how important it is for your child to be able to make eye contact with you when they are feeding. Again, whether or not you're nursing or bottle feeding is neither here nor there. They still need you. They need to know that you are there, that you are taking that time just for them to build that connection. It is a very important piece in that beginning of your relationship and building trust with your child. At some point, your child is going to become more aware. They are going to look up to try to make eye contact with you, and you never know when that moment is going to happen, and you don't want to miss it. So as much as you can, unless you're trying desperately just to keep yourself awake in the middle of the night and you just need something to help with that, as much as you can, try to give your child your full attention when you're feeding. Make that time about them. The next essential on my list is a comfortable place for you to feed your baby, because you have to remember that your needs matter too. Yes, of course, a lot of your time is going to be spent worrying and thinking about your baby, but you also have to remember to take care of yourself too. Otherwise, you're not going to have the energy to give your baby the best version of yourself that you possibly can. So make sure that you find a chair or a recliner, your couch, your bed. Find a spot that is comfortable, that works for you, because sometimes babies take a while to eat. You might be sitting there for a while, and you want to make sure that you're comfortable while you're there. It can also be helpful to make sure that the spot that you choose to feed your baby is consistent. This way it becomes familiar. It's part of your baby's routine. It's something that they can use as a point of reference for eating time. And along with that, making sure that that area is relatively quiet, kind of away from the hustle and bustle of everything else that's going on, so that your baby can really focus on receiving that nourishment and establishing that connection with you. My third essential for eating is actually a basket of your essentials, because again, your needs matter, but it's also about making sure that you don't have to stop and interrupt that time that you are trying to give to your baby. Having a small little basket within arm's reach that contains your water, your snacks, your nursing cover, your nursing pillow, whatever it is that you need when you are feeding your baby, having those things right next to you so that you don't have to stop and get up is incredibly helpful. And one of those things that you are certainly going to need when it comes to feeding a newborn is actually the last essential on my list here, and that is a good supply of burp cloths. Burp cloths are going to be your best friend as a parent of a newborn. I often was found with one over my shoulder at any time of the day, walking around the house, no matter what I was doing, because they are just so darn handy for everything, not only for your baby spitting up, but also for wiping off all of the milk that dribbles out of the corner of their mouth while they're eating and into their neck. And for, if you are breastfeeding, sometimes you start leaking, and so having a burp cloth handy was really nice for that. All kinds of things. So have a good supply of burp cloths that are super absorbent. A lot of people actually really like to use the pre-folds that go inside of cloth diapers because they're made to absorb a lot of liquid, and they're super easy to wash, everything. They last for a long time. So you might consider getting some of those, but burp cloths are definitely on my essentials list. And that is about it when it comes to worrying about eating where newborns are concerned. I'm sure there are all manners of other things that you could buy, but honestly, at the end of the day, these are the 4 things that are going to matter the most. They're the things you're absolutely going to need and use, and everything else is just a bonus. Next, let's talk about caregiving, because your baby is going to spend countless hours of their lives engaged in these kinds of activities with you each and every day. So my first essential is comfortable, unrestricted clothing. Think cotton, breathable, not too tight, not too loose, just a comfortable fit. Onesies and pants, or just simple sleepers. In the Montessori approach, we really focus on freedom of movement for your child, and especially for newborns and babies, because they're just learning how to move their bodies. So you want to save all of the cutesy little outfits, all of the cute little shoes, things that are stiff and starchy that make it hard for your baby to move and to stretch. Save those things for when they're toddlers and they are much more capable and independent in their movement. Instead, with your newborn, you really want to focus on just the basics, just enough to cover them, to keep them warm, but otherwise we are leaving their hands free. We want their hands uncovered so that they can look at their hands and experiment with their fingers and feel sensations. That's one of the areas of their body that is most sensitive among others. So leaving the hands free as well as their feet. Oftentimes we feel this need to cover our baby's hands and feet with the little no scratch mittens and with socks, just as a matter of course, because they're cute and you bought a whole bunch of them or received a bunch at your baby shower and you want to use them. But realistically, again, we want to give our child as much freedom of movement, as much opportunity to experience their environment, to feel all of those sensations as much as they can. So unless it's freezing in your house and your child needs to have their feet covered, if possible, try to leave them barefoot and again, nothing on their hands as much as you can. This also applies as your baby gets older, when they become a little more mobile, because then having that loose, unrestricted clothing, nothing on their hands and feet, it really allows them to make better contact with the floor as they are learning how to roll over and eventually how to scoot and crawl and things like that. It gives them that freedom of movement that they really need. So start when they are newborns, and it will be second nature to you by the time that happens. Another caregiving essential is a changing pad and a basket of all of your diapering essentials that you need. Now, the changing pad can be anywhere that you want it to be. It can be on top of a dresser that you already have. It can be in an actual dresser that has the little cutout for the changing pad that's meant for babies. It can be on the floor. It can be on your bathroom counter. It can be wherever is most accessible for you. But unless you are changing your baby on your bed, which is obviously plenty soft, but I would definitely say risky business, because you never know when your baby is going to have a pee or a poo when you least expect it. Unless you're doing that, having a changing pad is nice because it is a softer surface and your baby is going to be spending a lot of time there because you're going to be changing a lot of diapers, especially in those newborn days. And then along with the changing pad, again, it's nice to have a basket of all of your essentials handy right there next to you, ready to go. You know, generally speaking, extra diapers, wipes, maybe some diaper rash cream, lotion, whatever it is that you need for your child's diaper changing routine. This way, you don't have to stop what's going on and run to the other side of the house to go get it. It's just all right there. And my last essential when it comes to caregiving is related to bath time. And it's just some baby soap or shampoo and some lotion. Now, I think that you can absolutely use one of the separate baby tubs to bathe your newborn, or one of the little things like the seats that goes inside of your actual bathtub. You can definitely use one of those if you want to, if it makes you feel more comfortable. But I did not add it to my list of essentials because I don't feel like it is an essential. I think some people don't realize that there are other ways that you can bathe a newborn because it's so popular to see babies in their own cute little baby bathtubs. But it's actually a much more enjoyable experience for both the adult and the baby if you bathe your baby just in your regular bathtub or in the sink, whatever is easier, whatever they fit in. But to actually bathe them in just like an inch or two of water in your arm, like supported on your arm. It's very easy to do. All you really have to do is slide your hand behind their shoulders and then use your hand to kind of grip underneath their armpit so that their head and their neck are resting very lightly on your forearm. And then the rest of their body is just kind of free floating in the water. And that leaves you with a free hand to wash their hair and to wash their body and put water on top to get the soap out when you're done and everything. And it's so much more comfortable because your baby can be warm the entire time. They're not semi out of the water, feeling cold and maybe crying because of that. They're in the warm water the entire time. They feel your grip, you're making that physical connection with them, and you're likely going to be a lot closer to them in this position, so they're going to naturally make eye contact with you. And so it turns bath time into this activity that is not a to-do that needs to be checked off your list, that needs to be rushed through, but instead it can turn into a beautiful moment of connection between you and your baby. It can be something that you and your child both look forward to each day or however often you bathe your child. It's something that you enjoy doing together. And I think that is so much more preferable than the way that, it is more traditionally done, where baby hates bath time because they're freezing and the parents are rushing through it. So I would encourage you to consider maybe not using a baby bathtub at all. It'll be one less thing that you have to buy, one less thing that you have to worry about keeping clean. And I can tell you from experience, because I admittedly did use a baby bathtub for both of my girls when they were newborns, but with my second, after I learned about this other way of bathing babies, I started doing it that way, and it was so much more enjoyable. Like, the shift was night and day. So from experience, I'm encouraging you to try it the other way. Next up, let's talk about sleeping. The very first essential on my list is a Montessori baby toppancino. So you can think of a toppancino as like a baby pillow or a cushion. It's just about the size of your baby. It's flexible, so it's something that you can kind of fold up and around your baby while you're holding them, or it can be laid flat on the ground underneath your baby as well. It can also be really helpful for transferring the baby from one person to another, like if you have a friend or a relative visiting that wants to hold the baby, as well as for new siblings who are still learning how to hold a baby. It can be really helpful for them in learning how to keep the baby nice and snug and secure. And it's actually recommended that the mother sleep with the toppancino in the weeks leading up to the baby's birth, so that the toppancino really takes on the mother's natural scent. Because not only is it a soft place for your baby to lay on or to be cradled in when they're being held, but it also serves as a point of reference, a security blanket, if you will, something that's familiar to your baby no matter where they go in the house throughout the day. Now, I did include the toppancino in the sleeping category, although I feel like it could very easily have gone in the exploration category, which is next. But I did decide to include it along with the other sleep essentials because of the fact that newborns are very sleepy. So oftentimes, if you are holding your newborn while they sleep, they might very well be on their toppancino, and it could be a nice cozy place for them to take a little nap in arms. Or if you are transferring your baby to a surface for nap time, a lot of parents report that it really helps with transferring your baby without them waking up because it's still nice and warm. It smells like their mother. There isn't that sudden transition to a cold fitted sheet that could actually wake them up from their nap. Now, I wouldn't recommend leaving it with your baby while they're sleeping unattended, like overnight, for example, because that could pose a SIDS risk. But if you are having your baby nap nearby, somewhere that you can supervise and make sure that they're okay, then I don't see anything wrong with that. My next essential is either a Moses basket or a bassinet, because this is where it is most likely that your baby is going to be sleeping for those first couple of weeks and maybe even months. Now, this is a very personal decision, so I'm not going to say that what is right for one family is right for every other family. Some families actually decide to co-sleep by bed sharing, or they co-sleep by having the child's basket or bassinet in the same room. And still other families decide to have their newborns sleep in their own room from day one. Again, there is no right or wrong way to do it. Sleep is an incredibly personal decision. But what I will share with you is something that I know that a lot of Montessori families do, myself included, and that is to have their newborn sleep in a Moses basket or a bassinet for the first couple of months, usually like 3 to 6 months or so, before they eventually transfer them to a floor bed. Now, if you're planning to have your baby sleep in their floor bed from day one, or if you're planning to bed share, then obviously you don't need a Moses basket or a bassinet at all. But I find that it gives a lot of families, especially when they're very new to Montessori, a little bit more peace of mind about their baby's security in those first, crucial weeks and months after they're born, until they have a little bit more confidence and they're ready to make that transition. Now, let's say that you do decide to use a Moses basket or a bassinet for the first couple of months. You might then ask yourself, well, where do I put it? It is recommended for mitigation of SIDS risks to co-sleep with your baby in the same room for the first 6 months to a year. But another option for you, if you're finding that sleep for your baby and sleep for your family is just better when baby has their own space, something that you can do is to actually place the Moses basket right on top of their floor bed, where they will eventually be sleeping once they transition to the floor bed. And then it provides them with that point of reference from the very beginning. So that's an option for you too. The next two essentials on my list when it comes to sleeping are room darkening curtains and a white noise machine. In the Montessori approach, we try to create a sleep environment for our child that mimics as close as possible to what they experienced in utero, with the idea that it's really going to help promote restful, restorative, and eventually independent sleep. So if you think about what your baby experienced while they were still in the room, it was very dark, hence the room darkening curtains. And then it was quiet, but also kind of noisy in a way, because the baby is constantly hearing the mother's heartbeat, and there's this loud drone of her blood pulsing through her body. So it's not entirely silent. They are able to hear other noises too that are muffled. So by providing a white noise machine, you're kind of mimicking that in a way. And I can personally attest to the fact that a sound machine is incredibly helpful for not only helping your baby fall asleep, but helping them to stay asleep once they're asleep, because inevitably the dog is going to start barking, someone is going to ring the doorbell or knock, somebody is going to drop something on the floor by accident. These things happen as a part of life all the time, and sometimes they're just so loud and sudden that it causes your baby to wake up. So having that little bit of like a sound barrier to kind of muffle some of those noises really helps to get through those little things that happen. And then the final essential on my list for sleeping is a sleep sack. I feel like this might be a controversial essential is in the Montessori space, because there's this idea of having freedom of movement. We want our babies to be able to stretch their arms and move their hands and fingers and not be constricted like that, even when they're trying to sleep. So I didn't swaddle my babies like that, and I know that a lot of Montessorians will say not to swaddle at all. I actually used what I thought was a happy medium. It was a sleep sack that allowed them to have their arms and their legs completely free to move, but it had these like little wings that folded over and velcroed around their middle, just to give them that sensation of like being hugged a little bit so that they felt secure. So if you live somewhere that is warm year round, then you don't even have to think about swaddles or sleep sacks or anything like that. But if you're like me and you do live somewhere that has those seasonal fluctuations and you're worried about your newborn staying warm at night, then I thought that this was a really good happy medium. And my last category of newborn essentials is exploration. Again, people will tell you that newborns don't do a whole lot other than eat, sleep, and poop, and that is simply just not true. Newborns are born explorers. They are self-initiators. They are kicking and moving around and exploring what their bodies are capable of doing in the womb before they're even born. And when they come out, they are ready to just boop, pop those little arms and legs open and figure out everything that they possibly can about their bodies and about their environment. Newborns are constantly listening. They are looking, they are smelling, they are tasting, they are feeling sensations on their skin. They are taking it all in like little sponges. Now, if you remember nothing else, remember this: everything is a new experience for your newborn. Something that may seem completely mundane and boring to you, like the curtain swaying next to the window, is completely fascinating for a newborn, okay? Everything is new for them. And so they don't need a whole lot of entertainment. But there are a couple of things that can be really helpful to have set up for your newborn from the very first day that you bring them home, so that it's ready to go for them and they're able to use it right away. The first one is a movement mat. And a movement mat doesn't have to be anything particularly fancy. It can be a thin foam mat that's, got a washable cover on it. Or it could be a sheepskin rug or some other kind of semi-plush comfortable rug. It could also be just a thick quilt that you have that you've designated as, this is my child's movement mat. Anything that works for your family will work for your baby. And what most Montessori families do is set up a specific movement area that your baby is going to have this independent playtime in on a consistent basis. So that, again, it creates another point of reference for your child. They know that this is the area where they go to have their independent playtime, and it's the same, it's familiar every time that they're there, and they can begin to establish their mental map of their environment in your home. And so you can place your movement mat in this area that you have designated for your baby's playtime. I also think it's a really great idea to have a second movement mat, or maybe just an extra large blanket or something that you use as your baby's movement mat outdoors. A lot of parents don't realize that you can take a newborn outdoors, weather permitting, of course, because they are very new to this world and everything is very sensitive about them. But if the weather's nice, take your newborn outside, put them on this blanket under a shady tree, and let them spend some time just gazing up at the sky, looking at the silhouette of the branches against the sky moving around. Let them hear the birds singing, let them feel, the dappled sunlight that might be coming through the branches on their skin and how warm that feels. Let them feel the breeze on their face. These are all incredible experiences for your newborn that are going to enthrall them. So definitely consider taking them outside and having a little blanket or mat that you can use for that purpose. Another Montessori newborn essential for exploration is a horizontal mirror. So this is something that you will place in your baby's movement area, ideally just on the floor or on the wall right next to where your baby's movement mat is. This way they can look over wherever it is and see themselves. They can see their environment reflected in the mirror. It really helps to establish their spatial awareness, their body awareness as they see themselves and other people in the mirror. And it can really be entertaining for babies. They like to look at faces from the moment that they're born. So if you've got the space for it, it is definitely something that I would consider adding. The next essential on my list for exploration are the Montessori visual mobiles, because your newborn's eyesight is going to be one of the first things to develop after they're born. And it is their primary mode of exploration at this point. So the Montessori visual mobiles are a specific sequence of mobiles that are introduced at very different ages as your child grows throughout the newborn stage. The first one is called the Munari mobile. It is a black and white high contrast mobile that is feather light. It moves with just the slightest little bit of wind in the room. There is nothing battery operated or mechanical about it. It is something that you can hand make if you would like to. I actually have a DIY tutorial video that I did when I made mine that I will link down below for you if you're interested. But there are also commercially available options as well on, Amazon and Etsy and other websites like that. The Munari Mobile is specifically made for the earliest, tiniest newborns because their sight when they're first born is very limited in capacity. They can actually only focus about the distance between the baby's face and the caregiver's face when they're being held, so about 12 inches or so. They are born with just black and white vision. It's not very nuanced yet. And so this mobile really caters to those capabilities and attracts their eye and their attention, and it gives them something to focus on and to begin to learn how to track, because that is something that also develops in those first couple of weeks. The second mobile is the octahedron mobile. This one is a series of three-dimensional octahedrons that are made out of this metallic kind of flashy paper that reflects light really well. And they're in the three primary colors of red, yellow, and blue. This is suspended above your baby at about the same height that you would the Munari, about 12 inches, because they're still working on that distance of how far they can see. But it is colored because around the time that you would introduce the octahedron is around the same time that their color vision really begins to start developing. And so this really helps to hone that for them. And again, if you're interested in making your own octahedron mobile, there is a DIY tutorial video that I created when I made my daughters that you can follow along with, and I will link that in the description box down below. The third visual mobile is the gobi mobile. This one is a series of spheres that vary in gradation of color from darkest to lightest. They are hung at a 45-degree angle from the same rod above your baby. And the intention here is to help your child develop their ability to discriminate between different shades of color, because again, at the time that you should introduce it is when this skill is developing. It's also hung at that 45-degree angle because your child is also beginning to work on their depth perception, and so they can see the ball that is closest to them versus the ball that is farther away from them and all the balls in between, and that helps to work on that skill. And just like the other two, I have a DIY tutorial video for that one as well down below if you're interested in watching. The fourth and final mobile in the series is the Dancer's Mobile. This one is a series of human-looking paper figures, again made out of a metallic paper that reflect light. They are all featherweight, as all the Montessori mobiles are, so that they move with even the slightest bit of wind nearby. It is very beautiful to look at, and again is something that will captivate your child's attention around the time that it is supposed to be introduced, which is closer to the end of that newborn stage. Now, there are other visual mobiles that you can also try introducing to your baby if you are feeling so inclined. I've seen butterflies and I've seen whales. I've seen other black and white images that are kind of a riff on the Munari. There are all kinds of options out there. So if you're interested in any of those, then I'll be sure to put some links down below for you to some of the ones that I have personally come across. The next essential on my list is kind of like an optional essential, depending on whether or not you're using the visual mobiles. So if you're using the black and white Munari mobile, then you may not need this, but if you are not using the mobiles, then it might be very helpful. Or you can use both, you decide. It is a series of black and white image cards, high contrast image cards. And the way that I've often seen these used, the way that I use them myself, is to place them either up against the wall or up against the baby's shelf in the movement area so that the baby can observe them at will while they're on their back looking around. And so it's something that can really help to draw their attention and help them to develop their focus and concentration. And finally, the last essential on my list for newborns are books. It is never too early to begin reading with your baby. For newborns, you want to keep things simple. There are actually books that contain black and white images, like I was just talking about, that you can read with your baby. They have very simple silhouettes with black on white or white on black on opposing pages that have no words or anything. Those are lovely to read with your newborn. You might also consider any board books that have very simple images, just one image to a page, ideally on a plain background of some kind. If there are any words at all, and there don't have to be, then maybe just one word of the name of the image or something related to that image, and that's it. Really, at this stage, you want to keep things super simple because newborns just don't have a very long attention span, and you're always trying to set them up for success. Make sure you're focusing on things that they are interested in, like those simple images, or even better yet, faces, pictures of babies' faces that are nice and big and like take up the whole page. Those are the kinds of things that newborns like to look at. And so if you can focus on just those things, you'll be golden. All right, so that is it for my Montessori newborn essentials list. If you have any additions of your own to the list that you are just dying to share with us, then add those to the comments down below. If you are interested in learning more about Montessori at home or positive discipline parenting, I offer a couple of e-courses that walk you through it step by step, and I will put a link to those in the description box down below if you want to learn more about that. I also just wrote my very first book called The Montessori Home: Create a Space for Your Child to Thrive. That is going to be available in February of 2022, but it is already available for pre-order, so I'll add a link to that down below as well. And finally, just in case you are new to my channel, I also wanted to let you know that this video is part of a much larger series on this YouTube channel called Montessori at Home, which is aimed at providing practical tips and advice for busy parents like you and I for implementing Montessori at home with our children. So if that sounds like something that you're interested in watching more of, then you might consider subscribing to my channel. This way you don't miss a new video, because I do upload a new one just like this one every single week. Thank you so much for watching today, and I'll see you next time. Bye.